Hi, welcome to a new episode in the Internet Surfer, hosting the most horror and creepiest stories from Reddit. Please don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy.
Serious, what's something so bizarre and unusual that's happened to you that you do not share it with many people? Episode 2. When I was 16, I had just gotten home from school. Normally my little sister would be with me, but she was at play practice, which meant I had a couple hours to kill until I had to pick her up. Both my parents were at work, so I was alone in the house. I took off my pants and was chilling in just the white button down from my school uniform and my underwear. The way my house is laid out is that there are 2 stories, with the second story being a split level. On the first floor, there are 3 entrances, the front door which is never used and double locked. The door to the garage, which is always kept unlocked since the garage is always closed. And the back door which is double locked and goes out onto our screened-in deck, which has another locked door. I had entered in through the garage, shut the garage door, and went into the unlocked door to the house. I went to my room, second floor, to plug my phone into charge and went to chill in our bonus room on the computer. The bonus room is directly above the garage and is part of the split level. It is an open concept house and there are no doors to the bonus room, just stairs that lead directly up to it. So I'm sitting up there with both of my cats, probably on Reddit, when I heard this really strange crashing noise downstairs. Then what sounded like the ruffling of window blinds. Normally I'd assume it was one of my cats, but both of them were in the room with me, and both of them had clearly heard the noise as they froze and stared towards the stairs that lead to the first floor. I called out for my parents, wondering if they came home early. No response. As I mentioned before, this room is directly above the garage, which makes a lot of noise when opened, and it hadn't opened. So I ran to the windows to look at my driveway and the street in front of my house, thinking maybe my parents forgot their garage door opener. There were no cars there except for mine. Then I started hearing footsteps, like someone was walking around downstairs. I was freaked out, so I ran to hide in the bathroom of our bonus room. I locked the door and turned the lights off so a potential intruder wouldn't see light under the door. I definitely didn't want to die in my underwear though, and luckily I had left a pair of sweatpants on the floor of the bathroom from the night before. I put those on and stayed really quiet. Then the footsteps started getting louder and closer. It sounded like heavy men's boots stomping. It definitely appeared as if they were going up the stairs. I started shaking and crying while trying to be as quiet as possible. In the dim light coming from under the door, I looked for a weapon and all I could find was a set of 5-pound weights I had been using for Pilates sitting on the counter. I picked them both up in my trembling hands, thinking I could throw them at an invader and make a run for it. At this point I was cursing myself for leaving my phone in my room. Then the footsteps stopped. They stopped right outside of the bonus room. I started praying and then, after about 15 seconds, the steps started going in the opposite direction and up the set of stairs from the split level that lead toward the hallway where my room was. And where my phone was. But there are only 5 steps from the bonus room to that hallway. All I heard was 5 footsteps and nothing more. I sat in that bathroom for what felt like 20 to 30 minutes, crying in silence and scared out of my mind. But I heard nothing else. I finally got the courage to open the door and it took forever to ease myself toward the entrance to the bonus room. I don't know if it was just pure stupidity or adrenaline, but my 16-year-old self decided that the best course of action would be to scream at the top of my lungs and run full force up the stairs towards my room, hoping to scare the invader in a bid to grab my phone. No one was in my room. I grabbed my phone, threw the weights on my bed, and took off running downstairs as fast as I could. Remember when I said the garage door was always unlocked? Well, that is what I went for first. To my utter horror, it had been locked from the inside. Now the logical part of me would say to just unlock it and make a break for the garage. But the crazy scared part of me said, run for the back door. So I did. The back door that is always double locked was only locked on one of the locks. Before I could freak out even more, I opened that door and screamed, "I've already called the cops. Get out of my house." Or something like that, and ran outside, barefoot, in my sweats and school shirt. Then I realized I had messed up. I left my car keys in the house. I freaked out and ran straight up the street to my best friend's house, looking like a mess, crying my eyes out, makeup running down my face and pounding on her door begging to be let in. She let me in and I told her my whole story as I sobbed, and she tried to brainstorm what it could have been. We called my parents and asked if either of them had been home. Nope. Then I called my sister. Nope. The only other people with a key to my house were my best friend's parents, who were both at work. She called out of work, gave me a change of clothes, took me out for coffee, and arranged for her brother to pick up my sister and bring her to us because there was no way in hell I was going to let her go back to the house alone. We stayed at the coffee shop until my parents got home and I told them my story. They searched the whole house and saw nothing out of place except the weirdly locked doors. They didn't believe me and said I just imagined it, but I know it happened. I slept at my best friend's house for 3 nights in a row. I used to live in San Francisco, in a bad part of the city. My studio was insane at night, always loud, going down all the time, and I made a habit of heading out on long walks, bringing my guitar in my guitar case backpack. I usually ended up in North Beach or even the financial district, since it was always deserted and there were a few spots with great acoustics. If I walked to North Beach, I often made it up to Telegraph Hill and sat along the circular wall around Coit Tower. The views are some of the most recognizable in the world, and I am sure many of you have been in the same spot. It often was deserted. Or a few people in their cars, listening to music and hot boxing. I'd just sit and play and stare off at the view, not caring what I played, just sort of some private form of active meditation. This night I was on the wall/ledge facing the Bay Bridge. It was Indian summer and clear and pleasant out, but warm but not cold. It was late and there was maybe 1 or 2 people up there and maybe a few cars. I was playing and sort of in my own world when I noticed a woman and 2 men sitting next to me. They were just sitting there whispering and talking to themselves. I hadn't noticed them sit down, but that was normal, as I often was just in my own bubble. When I stopped playing, they stopped talking and I could feel them looking at me. It was dark, I wasn't weirded out by them, but they were different. Just the way they sat, their clothes, living there, I got used to spotting Europeans a mile away. It wasn't that. When I lit up a cigarette, they whispered amongst themselves in an almost comical way. Like I was right there. It was like they thought I wouldn't notice or something. Anyway, I'm already having trouble putting this down. This is my real account and there really isn't a way for me to recall exactly what was said. If I wrote it down, it would just be me writing fiction, so the best thing I can do is just sum it up and give you the weird goodbye. First of all, I got the sense that the 2 men were like watching or protecting the lady. They were very excited to be there. They asked me why I smoked. Didn't I know? Soon it just got weird. Soon it became obvious that they were under some delusion that they were visiting some ancient fabled place they loved. When I joked with them that was this some prank to make me believe they were time travelers, they laughed. No. This is just the place we made to remember, and this is our first time being here. This was back in the mid-90s. I didn't have a context for what they were saying or pretending to say. Who knows, they were probably on drugs. But when they suddenly scooted down off the ledge, the woman strangely gave me a hug. This is the part that makes me unsure if I should post this. She felt different. Like denser, and where our bodies met it was like warmth spread from the contact. She then simply said, "Don't forget to always press play." There it is. Again, I don't even know what this was. They probably were just a few friends playing some personal game or joke or whacked out of their minds. But, there you go.
I was pregnant and had no clue what to do. I was not a spiritual or religious person, but I begged and pleaded with whatever invisible entity would listen. I needed some kind of sign, because I was lost. Was I going to keep this child, or was I not? I had never intended on being a mother, and I was also hours away from moving to Peru. Another story for another day. All I can say is I've never begged from the depths of my soul like I did that night. Anyway, the next day I went to the grocery store to get a few things to eat and really just get out of the house. This is where it gets unbelievable and sounds super nutty, hence why I don't share it, but it is the truth. I paid for my groceries and start to walk toward the exit. A man stops me and starts on a whole spiel of how warm my smile is, etc., etc. Total crock, but my vain side decides to entertain him. Anyway, he tells me that he can tell I have a hard decision to make, but I'll choose correctly, and that there are bigger things at work and everything will be okay. Wait, what? It caught me off guard for a second, however. My logic came back and I realized you could probably tell anyone that, and it is true regardless. I kept humoring him. I was saying nearly nothing, as I'm quite shy, and he told me it was clear I didn't believe him, but he was going to prove himself. This is where it gets really weird. Stick with me if you can. So he asks if he can take my hand, and to this day I'm still not sure why I said yes, but I did. He closes his eyes for about 30 seconds or so, and when he opens then, he asked me if I was ready to receive this information. I nod. He tells me that he knows I'm pregnant. I am at absolute max for weeks pregnant, and not even slightly showing, and only one other person knows, and that my daughter, you don't find out what you're having until you're 18-20 weeks along, has big duties and will be an incredible addition to this world. If you've gotten this far, I assure you I know how absolutely fabricated this all sounds. I immediately begin sobbing, being hormonal, confused, and terrified will do that. He tells me that people are always put in your path at the exact time you need them. We hug, he leaves, and I go to my car to continue to cry. It was the sign I'd begged for, quite literally. My daughter is now 3 years old, and I've never loved someone as deeply or unconditionally as I love her.
We were 12 at the time that this happened. Our family is large, and so to keep up with each other, we have a huge barbecue yearly at an older cousin's house in the middle of the woods. Naturally, all us kiddos would play in the forest surrounding the property, because they weren't dense and we could easily be watched. So my cousin and I are at this barbecue, and at this point the sun is still bright but setting, around 4 p.m. It was summer, so sun doesn't set until 8:30 p.m., so we decide to head into the woods to play. We wander into the woods, not very far, I could still see the party through the trees, and came across a place where the trees sort of leaning over like an archway, and beyond this there was a clearing of tall grass and wildflowers. I remember thinking how pretty it looked. My cousin, who also sees this, spots a ring of mushrooms in front of the archway. We had read fairy books, but were at that age where we were all puff fairies. What are you, a baby? So as a joke, we decided to dance around the mushrooms. Keep in mind it has been maybe 10 minutes since we left the main part of the barbecue. Eventually we got bored dancing, so we explore the clearing and pick flowers. We step into it and had picked maybe one flower when a bunch of bugs started flying at us, so me and my cousin left and ran out of the archway. Into complete darkness. We looked at each other confused, but then heard our grandma's voice calling, so we walked towards that. Our grandma sees us and yells, "I found them," like they lost us or something. My cousin asked what was happening, and apparently we had been missing for hours and that everybody at the barbecue had been looking for us, combing the woods. There was easily 30+ people looking for us, and no one could see us even though we were maybe 7 meters away. My cousin and I have been back there and could never find that place again, so I guess moral of the story is don't dance around fairy circles.
I was walking around Target by myself and was stopped by 3 men who claimed that God told them I needed him. They asked if they could pray for me. They asked if there was something going on in my life that I needed God for, because he sent them to me. I was practically rolling my eyes back into my skull and thinking, what bullshit is this? I let them pray for me, but I was not convinced. The next day I found out that my boyfriend cheated on me and my whole world turned upside down. I chalked it up to total coincidence. Then 2 days later, I was at the mall and was approached by a man. God told me you need him right now. May I pray for you? I told him no thanks, that I was prayed for already 2 days ago. The next day I wrecked my car. Coincidence? And then, a few days later, while I was walking through a Walmart parking lot, I was approached by 2 men. God said you need him. I declined. This time nothing bad happened after that, thankfully, other than the turmoil of that already terrible week. Either Texas was full of weirdos on some kind of mission that week, or I needed some holiness in my life during a very difficult week. Still strange to me, even if it was one giant coincidence.
A neighboring couple 2 doors down from my childhood house were older. Maybe 60s to 70s. Nice people, I guess. I would always cross their yard to reach a friend's house and they were okay with it. Their son, who might have been in his 30s or 40s, eventually moved in with them. He would sit on the back deck and all day. I would make eye contact with him when crossing the yard. He would smirk as I passed by. Always told my friends and me we could play baseball in his backyard. I was once selling something for school and went house to house. Eventually, I came up to their driveway. We talked for a second and he asked me, "Want to come inside for a drink?" I don't have memory of what I said. But I remember feeling scared and him saying, "It's okay with your mom." Nothing happened, but years later I remembered this and always wanted to find out if this guy was a pedophile. He just had that vibe. I don't know. Happened when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. Now I am 26 and haven't told anyone about it. Freshman in high school, it was winter. After PE, the girls and boys had started opening the locker room doors to the outside to let in some cooler air. At some point, we'd started doing these little snowball fights back and forth. One night, I had a vision. It wasn't a dream, I wasn't quite asleep, about it, specifically, that a boy senior threw a snowball and it hit a girl senior in the eye and gave her a black eye. She was pissed, went to the mirror to inspect the damage. Small nick near her eye and a quickly forming shiner. Next day after PE, the scenario played out exactly as I had seen/experienced the night before. It was déjà vu for a full 20 minutes. I told a friend I had déjà vu about it, but I could tell she didn't really believe, so I don't really tell people about it. One year I biked down to the park for Canada Day, and while I was there my vision started deteriorating, getting fuzzier and fuzzier, with a constant tone growing in my ears, think flash bang sound from most games. After a few minutes my vision was completely dark and I could barely hear. It sounded like I was underwater. I had somebody lead me to some shade, it was hot out, and get me some water, figured I might be severely dehydrated. After about 15 minutes my vision came back, but I couldn't see green. Trees were red and black, the sky looked normal, basically like it would with the green channel removed from an image. It looked super freaky since I was in a park with lots of trees, everything looked wrong. Green slowly came back even later, but I noticed now that I have mild color blindness, deuteranopia. Whether or not that was the catalyst I'm not sure. I don't talk about it much because I'm an aspiring artist, and it is honestly pretty embarrassing. This happened recently, and I thought I was hallucinating or dreaming until a photo showed up in my phone. So, I signed into my mail account via my browser instead of the app, and there was nothing in my inbox, except some things from 2013. I had typed in my own email and password and I'm still baffled that it wasn't my inbox. Upon closer inspection, it was an email account that I didn't recognize, but it was clear it belonged to my abusive ex-partner after I opened an email and saw a photo from years ago of an igloo I had built with said partner. I closed all my apps, restarted my phone, and opened up my browser and there was nothing there. I tried to remember the address, who is Candy Smith or what is Caddy Smith or something like that, but couldn't. It was the morning, everything felt hazy, and then I started to think that maybe I had just actually been asleep. I take many medications, half of which affect my sleep or cognitive function, so I must have just had a very vivid dream, right? Wrong. The other day I was going through my saved photos, the ones saved automatically when you open them, you know the ones, and there it sat, the igloo photo. Honestly, I'm freaked out, a little concerned, worried that I'm going crazy, and paranoid that somehow, my crazy ex has to be behind it. I haven't told anyone, not a soul, because it sounds crazy just typing it out. My family's former house had a lot of long hallways. My room was at the end of one such hallway, and the guest bedroom was off it as well, but before my room. At the end of the hallway was the section of the house that led to the living room, kitchen, etc., and another hallway down to my parents' room. We liked to leave windows open at night, and one day I couldn't sleep and I heard what sounded like a slight pounding and then a loud dragging sound. I start freaking out and thinking someone is trying to get in through the guest bedroom window. I got up and slowly opened my door. I could still hear a dragging sound, but the guest bedroom door was closed. I inched in quietly as I could to the end of hallway so I could be between my parents' bedroom and the guest room. My thinking was that I could run to them and warn them if the guest door opened or something. I stood there for almost an hour. Finally, I went back and opened the guest door. There was nothing amiss. Freaked me out a lot though. I told my parents years later. For years I've had a strange connection/impact on certain electrical things. Streetlights flicker on and off when I walk or drive past them, to the point where friends have taken me driving over and over past a row of streetlights in different cars to test whether it's me or something else affecting the lights. I can sense electrical surges before they happen, but only seconds before, as if I can feel a change in the atmosphere. I can also put my hand to items with a charge, for example, the plug end of a power cord, and take the shock as if I am absorbing the energy so someone else doesn't get shocked. I tap my hand with the end of cables whenever I unplug them from an outlet. It's one of the hardest things to describe and I'm in no way superstitious or prone to chasing kooky theories, but I often feel like I'm in tune to some electromagnetic thing. Edit because someone just reminded me about cars. Every car I've owned or driven for an extended period of time begins having auto-electrical issues like fuses blown, electric windows failing, warning lights coming on for random reasons. The car I'm currently driving is brand new off the factory line and it started doing weird things on the dash display in the first month. I could just have a lemon, but I have another car in the garage with similar issues and all my previous vehicles have had odd electrical faults, dead batteries etc. Then again, I could just be really stuff at maintaining vehicles. When I was 6, my dad passed away from cancer. After his death, I was playing in my garden when I found a small stone just lying in the grass. It was in the shape of a kidney and I was so drawn to it that I kept it in my pocket and showed it to my mum later. I still remember her sad smile when she told me to keep it safe. It wasn't until I was older and we began talking about my father again that I found out he had suffered from kidney cancer. There was no reason for that stone to be in my all-grass garden, and yeah, it probably is just a strange coincidence. But I just can't get over the feeling of protection I still have over this small stone. I haven't told anyone since I never speak about my dad, it just sounds stupid now anyways. When I was younger I was walking my dog in these large fields behind my house. I was about 16/17. It was late at night and I was walking back to my house and it was also really dark. My dog was off the lead and he usually kept close. Suddenly he stops, his attention diverted one way, then bang, he had ran off. He didn't go that far though, because I could still see him when he suddenly stopped despite how dark it was. Next to him was this bizarre shape on the floor, with 4 long legs that bent out at weird angles. It was honestly not like any animal I'd ever seen, and because of where I live there's never been a report of some wild animal roaming free before. I feel like it was staring at me, but I couldn't tell. I called for my dog and suddenly this creature turned around and ran back in the opposite direction to me. At such lightning speed it was sickening. I never, ever told anyone. When I and my brother were younger, we looked forward to the summer time because my parents would set up those giant inflatable pools in the backyard and it was such a blast to play in. Well, one day, my parents set up the pool and leave to go get some groceries and I'm in charge of watching my brother to make sure nothing happens, i.e. drowning, but it all went well and after our day of play, we walked to the garage to change out of our clothes. Well, the garage door was open at the time because my parents backed their car out and forgot to close it, but I didn't think much of it because, well, it wasn't a big deal. Anyway, I and my brother are changing and suddenly this man appears at the front of the garage and starts walking in. I say, "Hey man, what's up?" and he asks if our parents are home. I don't know what possessed me to make up a story, but I told the dude that my parents were inside making lunch. Right after I said that, the dude just bolted. I know where the guy came from or what would have happened if I told him we were actually alone, but that was weird. I used to work at Harrods. They specialize in luxury retail, and they're the first shop in the entire world to do £1 billion on one site. Seeing celebrities was a fairly common occurrence, however, we were forbidden from acknowledging they were famous. We were expected to treat them like regular customers, doing otherwise could lead to a dismissal. One of my most distinct memories is seeing Rupert Grint. We just opened up a Harry Potter shop that was promoting the opening of the Harry Potter studio tour at Leaves' Den. The shop was done up to look like a room from Hogwarts, it had amazing merchandise and props from the film, the staff was even dressed up as students. It was absolutely amazing. I'd pop in on my break to look at the merchandise I wasn't going to buy, though I did buy a Ravenclaw tie. My department was right next to it with a doorway leading through. Well, Grint was walking through and wanted a look at the store but was more than understandably scared to go in. Fans were traveling from all over the world just go see that shop. I'd spoken to more than a few Americans that had come over just to see it, so going in would have been pretty much him going into the lion's den. I watched him for about 5 minutes standing in front of a bookcase just outside the doorway watching the room, looking at the display that had Hermione's Yule Ball dress, Fleur Delacour wedding dress and a Beauxbatons uniform before deciding to leave before he was noticed. So there was a large group of fans, buying all of the products, buying the books that had absolutely no idea that Ron Weasley was watching them. Two things come to mind. The first is the time I was walking around my neighborhood and a few miles away in the sky I saw giant fire spheres. There were 3 of them and they circled each other and made weird patterns and eventually just vanished. This happened in West Texas, and it was maybe 6 p.m. so it wasn't dark yet. Talking about it now even sounds like a dream I had a long time ago since I don't usually talk about it. My soul was with me, so I know I wasn't just seeing things. We even called the news station. The second is when we were driving in Northern California about 1 a.m. and we see this thing cross the road in 3 strides. It was a pale gray color, tall, like 7 feet probably, and had long lean arms, no hair or facial features we could recognize, but its head turned our way before he crossed the road and disappeared into the trees. I couldn't sleep that night. That one still scares me when I think about it. I was in 8th grade. Shy and reserved, not many friends, you get the picture. The only people I played with at recess were the kindergarten kids. There was a sweet little girl who, for some reason, always wanted me to play with her. That was way back in '99. I am now dating that girl. By some twist of fate we have the same hobby as adults, met up not too long ago and I asked her out. Something in my mind, after the fact, told me she looked familiar but we didn't piece it together until I mentioned where I went to school. Then she was like, "Wait, what?" We were so amazed that we actually crossed paths and interacted with one another almost 20 years ago, and had no clue we'd see each other again. She's 23, I'm 31, and we have never been happier. I don't tell anyone this because they might be weirded out or judge me in some way. I mean, what are the odds?
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.